Good evening, everyone. I didn't expect to be doing another Facebook Live event at the end of a long week here in Ottawa, but we just read a really concerning report from, it was actually published by the CBC, that CBSA officials have said that over half of the illegal border crossings that have happened in Manitoba and in other places in the country have been made by people with serious criminal records. I've posted the link just above the story for you to read. I guess I'm gonna switch the feed here to some of my other colleagues for their reaction, but I just want to let you know, I think the thing that's most offensive to me, we mentioned this in our video earlier tonight, was that we were asking the Liberals earlier today why all of a sudden the RCMP weren't releasing figures on how many people had crossed the border. And we're learning about this late on a Thursday night before we go into Easter weekend. I mean, that's just deplorable that the Liberals would try and bury a report like this that has such serious, very serious implications for the communities that are affected. And not only that, but for CBSA and RCMP officials who are having to deal with this crisis. The story that I linked to that's just above this feed, if you read it, you'll see that actually one of these officials were attacked by a legal border crosser. So, regardless of what your feeling is on this issue, the Liberals need to have a plan. They can't just sit back and say, nothing to see here, folks, which is the line that they've been giving us for the last 2 months. This is a very serious issue for many reasons. First of all, the fact that this report was buried, the fact that as the official opposition critic for citizenship and immigration, I'm learning about this on a Thursday night when they were banking I was going to be on a plane and not read it, just goes to show you how badly the Liberals don't want you to know this information. But moreover, they need to be held to account for not having a plan. So I'm going to go to reaction from my colleague Candice Bergen, who is a senior member from Manitoba, because I know that she's been dealing with this. So I'm going to go to Candice first. Candice, Candice, can you just talk about what the situation means for Manitoba and what you think this means for, this new information means for the communities that have been affected?
Hey everyone, we've been hearing a lot as myself and my fellow Manitoba MPs, people like Ted Falk, Larry Maguire, Bob Sopak and James Bazan have been hearing a lot from Manitobans who have been very concerned about the number of illegal migrant crossings that have been going on. And as Michelle said, we talked about it a little bit earlier, kind of as the wrap up around the week. But the report that we've just read right now on CBC, and let's be honest, CBC are usually very friendly to Liberals, and they maybe CBC decided to only release this tonight, late Thursday night, just before Good Friday. Listen, people are contacting us and they're concerned about these illegal migrants. They are not hateful people. They are concerned Canadians who want their communities safe, who also want to be able to help people who are legitimate refugees. So they've been expressing concerns and they've kind of been shut down. They've kind of been told by this Liberal government, oh, what's wrong with you? Aren't you open and welcoming? We're Canada. We sent a tweet out that says Canada's open and welcoming. Why are you not open and welcoming? Well, the Liberals are wrong, and the Liberals are being manipulative, because Canadians are open and welcoming, but Canadians are also fair, and Canadians want to have their communities safe. So we just have read this report. We haven't gotten a lot of information around it. The report says that half of the migrants who have come in at the Emerson border have serious criminal records. I guess that might answer the question as to why they maybe were being deported from the US, and maybe why it should have been important for the Canadian government, for Justin Trudeau, to have said, hey, you know what, wait a sec, let's talk to our counterparts in the US, let's find out what's going on, let's ensure our borders are safe, let's send a strong signal to these migrants that you can't just come into Canada illegally, and there would have been ways for them to have done that.
That's right.
But they didn't do it. In fact, they did the opposite. They did more tweets, come on in. In fact, I remember asking Ralph Goodale a question a few weeks ago, and Ralph Goodale said, yes, and in fact, they can have
Minister
free...
of Public Safety.
Yeah, Ralph Goodale's public safety.
From Saskatchewan.
He said they can have free health care in Canada. So come all of you from the U.S. You can have free health care in Canada. You know, listen, there is no doubt there are people who need a place of refuge. I mean, we were talking earlier about Christians who are being persecuted, people around the world who are being persecuted because they live in horrible places. We want to welcome them into Canada and help them. But what's happening at the Emerson border didn't smell right. It didn't pass the smell test. And the everyday average Manitoban, and I think Canadian, are seeing, they saw it, and I know they've been contacting our offices. The report that we just saw right now is confirming it.
Yeah.
Something's not right, and the federal government has an obligation to do something about it, not bury this.
So I've got two other colleagues here, my colleague Blaine Calkins and my colleague Shannon Stubbs, two very strong members from Alberta as well as myself. I know many people have been writing both of your offices on this issue. Why do you think that this is such a relevant issue for all of Canada, and why do you think this report that we're getting tonight at such a late hour, going into a very religious weekend, why do you think that that's so important for Canadians to know about, and what do you think we should be telling them tonight?
Well, I think Candace has captured certainly the concerns that I hear from the people in Lakeland who want to know what is going on with these border crossings. But primarily, it's two things. They want the laws and the rules to be enforced. They want it to be done fairly and to apply to everybody. It's also, what about all of the other people who follow all of the processes with regard to crossing the border or immigrating or coming in as refugees or visiting? All of those other people who follow all of the rules and do everything by the book. The duty of our government is to enforce our laws, enforce the rules, and do that fairly and equally. And the other thing is that, the United States is not a banana republic. They do have systems and processes and rights all in place, and so that's why the members of the opposition have been calling on our government, to be clear with Canadians about what their plan is to address this issue and to work with the United States to deal with it.
So Blaine, one of the things that we've been trying to raise in the House of Commons is that the Liberals have significantly increased the level of humanitarian refugees that are coming, the stream of immigrants that are coming in under the humanitarian stream. So previously that ratio was about 70% to 30% in terms of economic versus humanitarian. Was changed roughly 50-50. One of the things I've been raising is, if the Liberals want to welcome refugees, they need to have a plan to support them when they come here in terms of providing a proper integration programming, and they need to be transparent to Canadians about the costs. I don't think that they've done that, but these reports tonight have sort of compounded this issue because I think Canadians accept immigration if they see that there is a lot of effort put in place to the integrity, upholding the integrity of our the security of the integrity of our screening systems. What do you think this report tonight means in terms of Canadians' willingness to accept refugees at the long term if the Liberals don't address this issue and keep trying to sweep it under the carpet?
Well, I think what this actually shows us is the Liberals don't understand the difference between the definition of the word persecuted and prosecuted. This is very alarming. To me, look, my constituents have told me that we should be securing our borders. I mean, any nation should have its secure borders, and these are asylum seekers. These are not government-sponsored refugees where we've gone overseas. These are people who have actually had the means to make their way to Canada, and as Candace rightly pointed out, they're getting free health care. Not only that, the Liberals have restored extra health care benefits to these people, so they get dental and eye treatment if they need it. And now we find out that half these people have dangerous criminal records from wherever they're from, or maybe even from the United States. So this is very, very concerning. Look, this is something that we've been taking very seriously in the House of Commons. The Prime Minister has made some tweets that have been fairly careless and reckless. This is documented in the Toronto Sun and other media outlets where, the wrong signal is being sent, confusing signal that's being sent by the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, welcoming people, supposedly welcoming people into Canada, but he doesn't actually know what he's actually talking about. There's over 11 million people in the United States right now who are considered illegals, and what we know now is that half of them that have tried to make their way to Canada so far have good reasons to not be accepted into the United States. And this is a very naive and almost immature response by the Prime Minister on this issue.
People shouldn't be made to feel guilty for asking questions.
So, okay, Shannon, I'm glad you brought this up. So I switched the feedback to myself. I want my colleagues' reactions on this. Shannon brought up a very good point. And that's sometimes I feel when I raise very legitimate questions about the security of Canadian borders, I think it's very reasonable for MPs like us to ask the government and say, what are you doing to ensure that when people are coming into our country, the rest of Canada remains safe? Because there are people who try to enter our country that either have criminal backgrounds or some sort of an issue. So the labels that we often get when we raise these questions are racist or fearmonger. Look, this report that was published tonight is on the CBC website, so I think it's going to be difficult for people to use either of those labels. But why do you think it's so important for MPs like us to raise this issue with the government and for the Canadian public to push back and demand a reasonable debate on these issues? Because this is a big issue. Like, Candice, I know this is a huge concern for Manitoba, and it's not a partisan concern. Like, why do you think it's so important for us and other Canadians to demand a reasonable debate beyond what the Liberals are saying in terms of, I find that the pushback is often, you know, you're not being politically correct, or you're this or you're that, you know, you're bigoted. I mean, I think that, like, our party, we just, you know, you made the statement about persecuted ethnic religious minorities, Christian minorities. We asked for genocide victims to be brought into the country as refugees. We support this privately sponsored refugee program. Why do you think the Liberals are trying to paint the debate this way? And what do you think that means for the long-term safety of Canadians?
You know, truthfully, I tend to understand the Liberal mind. I find it something that's very bizarre. So I don't know why the Liberals are constantly trying to shut down and insult and tell people who don't believe the same way that they do that they, you know, they're bigots or whatever. Here's what I believe. I believe that whether it's politicians or other community leaders and people of influence don't listen to what people are talking about around the kitchen table or on a Thursday night, we then lose touch with those people, and then somebody else will rise up and will listen to what people are saying, but they might not articulate it or express it in a very legitimate way. So I believe that we need to listen to when people are expressing concerns. These are concerns that we hear from our constituents.
Absolutely.
Yes.
They're concerns that we share.
And they're reasonable, rational.
And instead of insulting people and saying, no, I'm here, I'm the thought policeman from the Liberal establishment, and you're not allowed to think that, you're not allowed to talk like that, because we're going to call you a name. Instead of doing that, we need to listen to people, we need to empathize. You know what, sometimes we have to correct. I have people that I might correct me on certain things, and that I can try to help them and enlighten them, because maybe I know something that they don't know, and they know things that I don't know. That's actually called a conversation, and it's called respecting each other. But the minute, you know, I tell you that you're not allowed to have your opinion because it's different than mine, and so I'm going to call you a name, and that seems to be what the Liberals do now. Yep. I mean, this is a really this is a really important issue politically for the Liberals. The Liberals were elected. You'll recall that the whole refugee thing really blew up during the last election. The Prime Minister won a lot of votes on this. He actually piggybacked on a lot of work that Conservatives did to bring serious and real refugees in, legitimate refugees. So the Prime Minister, this is a big part of his persona, is that he is open and welcoming. But what we've seen with this guy is it's a lot of a shell game. So he says one thing and then he does something else. Mm-hmm. And in this case, he is saying, I'm open to you if you agree with me, but if you're going to challenge me, or if you're going to give me any kind of a problem vis-a-vis, boy, I've got illegal people coming into Canada and I don't want to deal with it. Instead of dealing with it, I'm going to call you a name.
Yeah. So Blaine, I think you had something to add.
Yeah, look, in the years that I've been here, just to basically build on what Candace is saying, I've never seen anybody more intolerant than a progressive doing something in the name of tolerance. And all I'd like to say to my colleagues, I know what it's like to wear a uniform. I used to wear a uniform, and being a CBSA official is tough work. First of all, my appreciation and thanks to the officer that was assaulted for doing the job that I believe it's a she that she was doing. And just good wishes from a former conservation officer and a former law enforcement officer to the CBSA officials. Keep doing your job, do the best that you can, and hopefully someday we'll have a government that respects the law here in Canada.